What's coming off around here?
If you guys playing railroad anymore today, there's a landslide, a new cut.
Hi, I just wanted to share a few things. I don't have a great deal to share, but I had a thought that some of the viewers may not be familiar with how this balsa wood and basswood sizing works. And how I come by this thought is, you recall that I want to put the external bracing on the doors, and I'm going to use balsa wood to do that. So I had to get some wood that would, we'll go back to this picture for a moment. I had to get some wood that would match up with the sketch that I made. So what I did was I got this balsa wood, and let me see if I can make sure you can see that here. It matches up nicely with the width. However, this one, pardon me, didn't mean to shake you. This one's too thick. And I say that because when the doors are opened, there's not a lot of clearance down in the bottom here. So as a result of that, I'm going to go with a different size. So, which brings me back to what I said about sizes. This piece of balsa wood right here is very thin, is 1/32 by 1/32. So balsa wood apparently comes in degrees of 30-seconds. So this piece is 1/32 thick by 2 30-seconds wide. And this one is basically, it's 3 30-seconds wide, but it's 2 30-seconds thick. So I ordered a replacement. I got some more of these coming that are 3 30-seconds wide, but only 1 30-seconds thick. And so hopefully that's going to be sufficient to allow these doors to be able to clear, because there'll be trim as well on the side of the door, so that the trim or the bracing on the door is going to encounter that. The doors only need to open that to that degree, and 90 degrees out. So I'm not foreseeing disaster here, but I do foresee some issues, and something I may be able to just work around by tweaking the wood that I finally place on there. So that's enough of that. And I think what I'd also like to share in this video is, I have said that I'm trying to get my model railroad service yard designed. And so I've turned to, what's it called, Railcad. And I'm going to try to, let me share with you what I've done with the design so far. And perhaps maybe some of you will have some feedback on that. I just wanted to continue a little bit discussing the two stall engine house doors. And I wanted to point out that the doors have been attached to the wood, well, with the little brass tubes that are where the hinge goes into, is attached to the wood using super glue. And this is the product that I've been using, which is a pretty good product. I have no problem with it, but I have a problem with the doors popping off when they've been operated, or if I did any kind of work to them, and they pop off where the brass tube is connected to the wood. And I think in all I've reattached these brass tubes probably 8-9 times, and it just, after, I don't know, about the sixth time, it became like a hobby in itself. So what I've done is I've switched from using the super glue to using epoxy, and this is the product that I'm using to attach them. And actually, I think I've replaced all of the tubes that were attached using super glue. They're all attached with epoxy now. And the epoxy, it's my opinion, I can't prove it, but I believe that the epoxy manages to sustain its adhesion and cement to the wood, between the brass and the wood, much better than the super glue when there's some kind of stress applied. And I think the super glue is great and used by a lot of modelers for construction of models that I guess are mostly static models, and that they're just not going to be operated in some fashion. Whereas with these doors, I needed something that, in my opinion, has a better grip, has holding powers that are better than the super glue. So the epoxy seems to be working. I've been fussing with these doors now, and I've not had one of them pop now. And I think they're all epoxy. Like I say, there's 8 of these hinges, and I think about 6 or 8 times I've replaced them. So another thing I wanted to point out, well, of course, when I designed this model, I wanted it to be removable because I wanted to do, add some lighting and some interior detail. So the model's not going to be finished for a while, but at its current state, it's pretty well built up where I'll be able to use it on designing the actual service yard, which is actually it's the point that I wanted to get to for this video, is the design of the service yard, where I got my ideas from, etc. But getting back to this 2-stall engine house, well, it basically forms like the root point for all of the trackage and layout. It's sort of the cornerstone of the service yard. And so that's why I had focused so much on building this, because from here, there's going to be also a turntable installed, and the way that the track comes in on, it's a 2x8 surface, and so there's not a lot of depth. And so the way that the track comes in, I wanted it to look as natural as possible and not be just, straight on the edge kind of deal. So that's the reason why this was so important, to get this to a point where I could actually install it on the benchwork. I got a foam surface on the benchwork, and I may show a picture of it here. But the foam surface will have to, you can see this is a little elevated. So this has to be a bit recessed. Well, one other thing has occurred, and you'll recall, if you've been watching this channel, you'll know back when I built this base that I carefully coated the base of this particular material, which is kind of pulpy. It's a bit woody, but soft. So I varnished it with several coats of varnish, top, bottom, edges, to prevent it from warping. Well, guess what? It's warped, and I'll show you here. It's got quite a warp to it. So to that end, what I did was I purchased this beautiful piece of maple plywood, and it's very, very strong. There's no flexure in it or anything. And so I don't believe that the maple plywood is going to warp. So given that assumption, what I'll do is I'm going to transfer this shape of the base to the plywood, and then I'm going to clamp and glue and weight down the this base to the plywood, and hopefully it will stay straight. With that, I'm new at this level of modeling, and so I'm learning as I go, and so I'm going to make mistakes, or I'm going to have errors in judgment, but I think this is a safe one until proven otherwise. So here we have that concern. The other thing I was going to get at, and getting back to the main topic, what I want to discuss, is the actual track plan for the to be installed on the foam surface of the benchwork. So it's a 2x8 plan, and I'll get on to that in a second. Okay, well, I guess I'd like to get right to it and start talking about the new track plan that I've got put together for the engine terminal for the Lehigh Valley Terminal Railroad. The service terminal had to have a variety of features, that is, service points, such as coaling and water. That, to tell you the truth, this is it's fairly new, and I never really gave a lot of thought. Like I'm kind of a borderline railroad enthusiast, and it's weird to say that because I grew up reading railroad magazines and following through with all of those fallen flags and all of the names of the various railroads were on the tip of my tongue. But after all of these years I wouldn't say disinterest, but just simply not having time to invest in this hobby, a lot of my knowledge is gone. I don't remember much of it. And in all of the past interest, I never paid a lot of attention to details like specific kinds of locomotives, types of service that locomotives may have had, that I really may have, I could have done it, and maybe I should have, but because now I'm seized with this desire to build and operate a model railroad. So, and I'm kind of doing it with a lot of black holes. And in order to fill them in, the whole point of this conversation is that I really didn't know what needed to be in a transition era service yard. And so I had to do some research. And I wanted to just quick share, before I actually show what I've done, I just wanted to quickly cover some of the information sources that I touched on. I had, let's see, let me get this out. I had created a folder, as you see, of, I call it service yard. And this was a lot of my research that I went through. And I came up with, after doing the research, I came up with a pair of sketches that show two different types of service yard layouts, and each one had its. What the thing I was looking for basically was what's common, and what do I want to extract from these two that I composed from a lot of my research into the final track plan that I have for the Lehigh Valley Terminal Railroad. So I carefully labeled all of the various service points for this particular one because this is a transition era service yard. It has a diesel arrival track and a steam arrival track. So, and then there's a trackage that allows certain other features to take place to support the service areas. Like here's an ash hoist, so there would be a gondola, for instance, parked on that track. And here's a coal bunker, and so there would be where the coal is dumped. Here would be another gondola full of coal that would be dumping. But I think you can see this, and perhaps many of you are already real familiar with this kind of requirement that a service yard would have. For me, like I say, it's really fairly new. So I created, I'll show this better, but this is basically the layout, the track plan. You see here on the corner is the two-stall engine house. And this is all done with RailCAD. So did I say that correctly? No, AnyRail. Well, there's 4 different CAD systems I'm aware of. There's AnyRail, RailPro, SCARM, and XtrackCAD. And for some reason, I keep calling AnyRail RailCAD. I don't know where I got that from. Sorry about that. But anyway, like I'd been pointing out earlier, the two-stall engine house becomes the cornerstone effectively for the entire plan. And I didn't want, as I pointed out earlier as well, I didn't want the track plan to be parallel to the 2x8 surface. So I wanted to make sure, though, that I could include all of the necessary service points. And I did make a change from, um, rail delivered products, or so to speak, where they would be automatically accumulated into the service point. But rather, what I did was I positioned a crane. And one of the things that you might recall from a previous episode is that I purchased this Scenics Detail crane kit. And so the idea is to not put the shovel bucket on, but rather put a clam bucket. And I bought a clam bucket kit. So this has to get built. However, this kit is how I expressed my desire to have a crane. It's not really a crane, it's that kit that would service the ash pit and the coal bunker. And so there's no automatic equipment in my mind for this terminal railroad necessary. We just needed to have a crane so we can get product from the ash pit or from the coal to the desired location. So I have a track feeding in, and that track is for picking up the ash, and the other is for delivering coal. So I got, in the past, I was looking at designs for coal, a coal delivery system like that, and so you see I've decided not to go with this for the service yard. That's just a bit over the top. And I had some photos of other coal delivery systems that are, and here you see this water tank. It's an old wooden water tank, and it would have been appropriate for a very old service yard, and it would have been a nice feature to have. But as I pointed out also previously, is that this end cap for, let's see, what is this, 5-inch? It was 4-inch pipe. I'm looking at it now. Of course, it doesn't say. But anyway, I think that's 4 inches. Yeah, yes. And what my plan is to put steel vertical structure holding this up, so the water will get pumped up, and then the water is going to be piped to what they call them, a standpipe. You may have heard that expression, but the standpipe is by the track, and then it's elevated to where the hose on the pipe, standpipe, will actually dangle down. And there's a very similar kind of structure called a standpipe, also used to deliver sand. So, and this is another thing that I learned about sand, is that the way that the service yards manage the sand is that they'll have trucks deliver it, or some will have it delivered in gondolas or covered hoppers. And the sand, though, has to be dried, and then once it's dried and filtered, it gets pumped like up through a standpipe as well. So sand delivery is much the same as water, diesel fuel, and such. Speaking of diesel fuel, there's a nice model for a fuel dock, and so that I believe I'm going to try to build something similar to it. I don't know that I would replicate the detail that came with this kit, but the fuel dock is a great idea. I have some other images that go along with that, and you can see on the pencil scribblings there that I've extracted some dimensions to be able to build it based on the door. By using the doorway, you know that the doorway is approximately 7 foot tall. So I could take that and then scale it back to what is required. So I could scale that up to, is that 7 foot, and then scale that to what would be appropriate for HO scale. And now here's another nice picture of fuel dock, and this was nicely modeled. It was, I like the little touches with the weather. And then there was yet another picture of a fuel dock that was shown. So I have more information, but getting to some of the other sources, like the overall need for various service points, I gathered some from different magazines that I purchased, like this Model Railroad magazine. Tony Coaster has an image, where's it? Here it is, of this service yard. And so I got some ideas from that. And then, of course, there was this wonderful magazine on locomotive service and terminals. And I was able to pull some of the information from that, showing, nice images. By the way, my idea to use the crane came from this magazine. So I thought, how appropriate for, for a terminal railroad that's not going to be thrown around big bucks building. That would be so nice to use, so I did it. And here's some more showing some of the trackage labeled and the various service points in the yard. So, as if that wasn't enough, I also got track planning and looked through that. And this picture here is basically an enlargement of the image that you see in the magazine. And so, it labels and names the various kinds of track and service points that are included in the service yard. Let's see, there was another item here. Let's see if I can get to it quickly. Oh yeah, when I was building the benchwork, I was concerned about how high to make it and what kind of viewing angle that would be involved. So there was some information there. But I also wanted to, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump you. I also wanted to show this book. I got this book off of eBay, and I bought it because you see the 1948 puts this encyclopedia appropriate in time for a transition era railroad. And there were several points of interest that I found in here. I mean, there are many, many more than what I'm going to share here, but this is an incredible book. And here it talks about switches, frogs, and guardrails, and it goes into considerable detail about those various items. And then there's, let's see, where's the next? If we dig back further. Here we have a section on pumps. And here's the standpipe. Let's see, how do we call this one? Well, they don't. But I call them standpipes, and I think some references do, and there are other names that they may go by. But this is the kind of structure that I have to build. I'll probably scratch build it for delivering water and for sand. Yeah, let's see, there were some other really cool, this book has, sorry, I'm leaving you. Here I am. And here's another shot of a standpipe being operated. And you see the operator's using this, I could get over here. He's using this giant wheel to be able to control the water flow. And then on the opposite page is another picture of a standpipe. It says diesel water column type. Well, I'm not sure. But I imagine if it's a passenger diesel, it has to have steam, and so steam would be necessary. You'd have to have water. Right? Here's another shot of a crane. This one's talking about fuel stand stations, but you see the clam bucket, which is a nice picture to have because I can see, how this assembly is going to look. Now this particular service yard, they're using to get rid of. Looks like they're getting rid of. They're loading coal, I think, into a hopper. It says 2 views of a bucket loader operating at a coal storage site. So that's exactly what it's doing. This is some really cool pictures from 1948. And let me see if there's anything else I wanted to show. There's something here. This is actually, they don't call it a standpipe here in the picture, but that's another one. This is basically showing how I think this is fuel for a locomotive for diesel, but the fuel is pumped up in here in the reservoir, and then it's drained down into the locomotive to fill it up. And they show, on this page, they actually show a picture of a locomotive being fueled. So this one obviously has fuel tanks on both sides. So anyway, there's that service. So let me talk in a little more about the service yard that I planned, and I'm going to bring up a picture and we'll talk from that. I'm going to discuss the items that are placed on this track plan. This is the track plan that I've come up with at this point, and it may require tweaking and such, but in the basics, it's got what I consider to be the majority of service points that are required for a service terminal yard. And so I've taken, as I said, all of the information that I gleaned from the various publications I've reviewed and applied them to this yard. Where we start with over here is the two-stall engine house. And the one thing that's missing there in this picture is the inspection pit. The inspection pit I'm going to place in the base of the two-stall engine house before I install it. And it'll be placed right on this trackage here, so that, it'll allow the maintenance people to get underneath the locomotives and be able to inspect the underside. So that is the start of the entire, it's like I said, probably several times, this is the anchor from which all the rest of the track was created. Now, whether or not I add additional tracks over here, these are locomotive storage tracks over here. And this turntable, unlike the image I just showed you, this is a 90-foot turntable. So I don't know how I managed to mislabel that, but I had 30 on the previous display, and I've corrected it here. One thing I might mention about this again is any rail, and all of these squares are 1 inch by 1 inch squares. And so I can use that dimensionality in order to calculate on the actual benchwork surface where I want to place the track and the items, the different structures. Now, the water tank is a floater. I don't know that it'll be here, but again, not shown are the standpipes. And so I could put that water tank just about anywhere as long as it's reasonable enough where I can say that the water is being piped from the tank over to the standpipe. So the turntable doesn't require much explanation. It's a 90-foot turntable, and it's a Walthers kit. So from there, the track was placed out here so that the initial entry to the service yard will be at this point, right on the edge of the service yard benchwork. And so there is a departure track here. So anything that's been serviced and has been placed over here can be taken back out into the departure track and taken out to the to actually perform distribution of anything that's been dropped off by the main railroads for transit to any kind of service areas that this railroad services. So speaking from this point, the train would as it would return to the yard, would enter one of two tracks. This would either come in on the diesel arrival or the steam arrival. Now, so the diesel arrival doesn't require a great deal for the fact that it's only a freight service. We don't have any, there's no passenger service out of this railroad. So it comes over here where the fuel tank is located and can get refueled before it's stored over by the engine house. So the fuel tank would be placed in approximately this location. I've left, well, only before I jump to that, I'm going to go ahead and continue with this. When the steam engine returns, it's going to come by and it's going to dump its ash into the ash pit. So my understanding from what I've read is that the steam engines will still have enough steam pressure to be able to come over here and come to the sand bunker and go back across the turntable. It's not going to lose its steam pressure that quickly. So the ash, it can dump its fire here into this ash pit. So there needs to be a means to get rid of the ash. And so here's the crane that I mentioned. It's like trying to keep my hand out of this so that it doesn't get it.
1 hour to go.
Okay, thanks. I needed that. Something to edit out. Okay, so the crane is positioned here, and so it can reach in and grab the ash and put it into a hopper car that may be placed on the ash removal track. And in addition, the crane can come over here to the coal bunker where there's been coal deliveries on this track this track will, I imagine this track is elevated. That's how I viewed it, so that the elevated track that allows the hopper cars that are pushed up here with coal to dump down into the bunker. And then the crane will just simply pick up the bunker, the coal from the bunker and deposit it into the locomotive's tender. So the locomotive then, of course, gets down here, and there'll be another standpipe where the sand is loaded into the locomotive, and that'll go along with the water standpipe. And the boiler pump, and the boiler is what's used to dry the sand. So the sand is loaded, taken from the bunker into the boiler and dried, and then it's pumped from the boiler into the sand standpipe. That's about it, I guess, is pretty much the details. But there's small, subtle things missing. For instance, how do I, manage the control of the locomotive movements? And I may add some lights, signal controls to it. I'm not certain about that. That's pretty far down the road. The principal goal for me right now was to get some kind of service yard design based on all of the literature that I'd been reviewing, and be able to establish a footprint for where the two-stall engine house will go in this. And it's possible that there may be other trackage coming through here. I'm not sure yet how that'll work. And the same things for that, but it may just be scenery in this area. We'll see how that works out. I just heard that Dan Thorne, superintendent of the Lehigh Terminal Railroad, is out in the yard, and he's having a discussion with one of the engineers. Let's listen in. Dan, I forgot to put a like in for this video.
Why, Tom, you ain't done for anything like that in 20 years.
Gee, Dan, I just forgot. It won't happen again.
Don't you let me see you around these yards? Go on, go on.
Dan, he's going to forget the light again. He's done it before.
He knows better than that. Why, I'd have to rule him off the road.
Wow. Geez, I hope Tom never makes that mistake again. He's a valued engineer on the Terminal Railroad. It would be a shame to lose him.